Time being 7 o'clock, I call to order the March 22nd, 2002 Franklin School Committee meeting. Meetings are being recorded by Franklin TV and shown on Comcast Channel 11 and Verizon Channel 29, as well as recorded by Franklin Matters. Any individual who also wishes to record must notify the chair. At the conclusion of our regular business meeting, we will be adjourning to executive session and will not be returning to open meeting. Before beginning this evening, I just wanted to ask the rest of the committee their thoughts on moving the FHS student rep comment section to immediately follow our moment of silence instead of after the entire budget hearing. Figured that would give them a chance to go home. So is there, before we go, sorry, I forgot, we have to do a roll call attendance. All right. Camille Bernstein? Here. Dave Callahan?
Here.
Al Charles?
Here.
Dave McNeil?
Here.
Elise Stokes?
Here.
Megan Whitmore?
Here.
And Denise Spencer here. Sorry, I turned and I was like, that's not Elise. Okay, so do I have a motion to amend the order of the agenda for the student representative comments?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote on the motion. Camille?
Yes.
Dave Callahan?
Yes.
Al Charles?
Yes.
Dave McNeil?
Yes.
Elise Stokes?
Yes.
Megan Whitmore?
Yes.
Denise Spencer, yes. Okay, so you guys will go right after the, I'll let you know. Okay, that is done. All right, so next we have our pledge students. So tonight, we welcome leaders from the FHS DECA team. DECA is a 501 not-for-profit career student organization with more than 225,000 members in all 50 United States and numerous countries abroad, including over 7,000 members in Massachusetts. The program allows students to gain real-world experience in the field of business through making connections with local companies and challenging students to step out of their comfort zone. Sample DECA events include role-play events where students address a scenario in a timed situation and written papers where students create a plan to enhance an existing company or create a new one. Franklin High School received its DECA chapter in 2015 and has since grown the organization's membership to 145 high school students. All students compete at the district level competition, and qualifying participants may compete at the state and international competitions. This year, the Franklin chapter had a record 87 members compete at the state annual competition in Boston, and 24 qualified for the international competition in Atlanta, Georgia, taking place in April. And these, some of the folks are Elizabeth Tang, Vaishnav Malhotra, Drew Mahoney, Timothy O'Keefe, our own Nippon Goel, Maxwell Volmicki, Audit Batia, Samin Sheikh, and Rachel Wan. Congratulations to this talented team of individuals. If you wouldn't mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, guys. Good luck in April. And as is customary, we'll pause now for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. All right, our FHS student reps.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Shaw Downing. I'm the class vice president of the class of 2023. I'd like to just start with clubs. The Franklin Theater Company is moving on to their regional competition with their production of Cave Dream, and they won multiple acting, ensemble, and technical design awards. Their regionals will be held at FHS on April 2nd. For sports, congratulations on all winter sports on a great season. All teams made tournament, and congrats to gymnastics for winning states and cheer for winning nationals. Spring sports just started today, or yesterday, and today was day 2 of their tryouts for all sports. Freshmen and juniors need to take the concussion test if they haven't done so yet. Also, jazz band is advancing to the MAJE States Finals this Saturday in Norwood. Mock trials holding a live scrimmage this Thursday night at 6:30 in the FHS library, and everybody is welcome to watch.
Hi everyone, I'm the class of 2023 president. Just some more updates. Specific to the class of 2023, prom tickets just went on sale. Students were emailed the link, and the link will be sent out via Google Classroom and social media as well. It's very exciting. It's going to be on May 6th, and the theme is Ancient Greece. And we just want to thank Lombardo's for allowing us to hold our prom there. There's been a lot of questions, and we'll soon put out a Q&A document answering most of our frequently asked questions. As for just some general whole school news, this week is MCAS testing for the underclassmen. Many juniors have been taking the SATs as seniors are finalizing college plans, and just spring is coming. As Shaw said, spring sports just started today, so we'll have a lot of news coming out with more events in the coming weeks. But other than that, that's about it.
That's about it. That's a lot. So excited to hear about the prom. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Did you guys have any questions, comments? All right, get out of here.
Thank you.
All right, so moving right along. So at this time, we require a motion to open the public hearing for the FY23 budget hearing. Do I have a motion to open the hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, vote will come on the motion. We'll have a roll call vote. Camille Bernstein?
Yes.
Dave Callahan?
Yes.
Al Charles?
Yes.
David Neal?
Yes.
Elise Stokes?
Yes.
Megan Whitmore?
Yes.
And Denise, yes. All right, motion carries. So the FY23 public hearing is now officially open. Dr. Ahern and Miriam, you can come on up, prepare, get ready.
Great, thank you. So here we are for the FY23 budget hearing. Miriam and I have a brief presentation it'll be similar to the one that you saw with the superintendent's recommended budget. We have brought back some additional information to share with you, but the slides are largely the same. But we may have some different audience members, and I think with all things school department budget, some of this bears repeating, because it's not the simplest formula to figure out state versus local revenues and how that factors into the expenses for the school department. After the presentation, the committee will have the opportunity to review really each line. So there's a summary in your budget books. There is a blue line that kind of summarizes major categories. The chair of the school committee will read the account number, will read the line, and then the proposed FY23 budget figure. And should any school committee member wish to ask questions or make a comment on one of the lines, as she reads it, you'll ask to hold that line, and then we will go back to the beginning and review those questions and comments. And then when the chair feels the time is ready and appropriate, there's an opportunity for the public to engage and ask questions related to the proposed FY23 school department budget. Along with Miriam tonight, Lucas Jagir, Assistant Superintendent, Paula Morano, Director of Student Services, and Dr. Tina Rogers and Dr. Linda Ashley are here as part of the central office team, who, along with the principals, did tremendous work, and the school councils in putting the budget together. And with that, we will start the presentation. And Dr. Rogers, if you don't mind advancing the slides, that would be great. So as noted in previous meetings, our budget is anchored by two things. First and foremost, the community's vision for the graduates of the Franklin Public Schools, the Portrait of a Graduate, that contains 5, I think, really important areas that are alive and well in our classrooms. Confident and self-aware individuals, empathetic and productive citizens, curious and creative thinkers, effective communicators and collaborators, and reflective and innovative problem solvers. And I just want to pause. I sometimes breeze through this slide, but I don't always recognize the effort that went into putting the portrait of a graduate together and really the thousands of data points that this graphic represents, and all of the people in the community of Franklin who weighed in on this. Students, families, community members, higher education officials, elected officials, administrators, faculty and staff all had an opportunity to weigh in the creation of the portrait of a graduate. And I think that that the outcome of it is phenomenal. What's even more phenomenal is walking through school buildings, and I was just in one today, having a conversation with a principal and seeing the ways in which that principal is incorporating it into faculty meetings, incorporating it into professional development, and linking the work of the educators in that building to this vision. The FY23 budget also continues our work in pandemic recovery, and one of the messages that I have shared and would like to repeat is that recovering from the pandemic and the impact of initially a shutdown, then remote learning, then hybrid learning, on top of just all of the social unrest and other impacts related and stress that everybody's been feeling is going to take time, and it's going to take more than 1 year. And so our priorities in terms of supporting students academically, socially, and emotionally, making sure that we continue to think about health and safety practices and the ebb and flow of those health and safety practices, depending upon the circumstances. And of course, the continued support of technology integration is an area for us to be focusing on, both with the operating budget as well as with the federal grant funding that still remains available to us and is planned for. Part of Franklin's story was that Franklin rapidly grew about 20 years ago, and we have been experiencing an overall student enrollment decline in the past decade or so. It is not unusual. There are actually many communities in the Commonwealth that are experiencing a decrease in student enrollment. Ours is perhaps a little bit more acute because of that rapid increase 20 years ago. We are leveling off at the elementary level, and we're going to be seeing some enrollment decreases in the middle and high school in the coming years. Despite the overall student enrollment, we are seeing, however, more intense needs among students. This includes needs by students receiving special education services. It also includes an increased number of students in our English learner population who require specialized instruction in English language acquisition. But I would also say that all of our students, I think, have an increasing level of need given the pandemic and what we've all been experiencing. And your budget, the proposed budget, reflects that. We also anchor our work in our 4 goals: social emotional well-being of students and staff, in engaging in rigorous curriculum, high-quality instruction to meet the academic and SEL needs of each learner, and effective two-way communication to support learning. And again, there are key areas in the line items of your budget that reflect these overarching goals. And I want to take a moment and really commend the team because I think that there are some really incredible things planned for FY23 that are going to have really important impacts on student learning and the student learning experience. So to date, there have been several opportunities for budget development, initiating with the school committee's budget workshop in December to understand the school committee priorities. The budget subcommittee has been meeting with me and Miriam in terms of FY23 budget development. We've also been working as a central office team and with principals who have their own site-based allocations. We've also been collaborating with the town administrator and finance staff in putting forward the superintendent's recommended budget, which came before the school committee on March 8th. March 10th, we had a joint budget subcommittee meeting, which I thought really laid out the town kind of fiscal picture for the next year in terms of revenues and expenses. and I had an opportunity to share with the members of the Joint Budget Subcommittee, which include the School Committee's Budget Subcommittee, 4 representatives from the Finance Committee, and 4 representatives from Town Council, who are on their Budget Subcommittee, where we are with the Superintendent's recommended budget. Since then, we had a Budget Subcommittee meeting to further discuss the Superintendent's recommended budget, and we are here today for the public budget hearing. Miriam's going to talk a little bit about state and local funding.
Great, good evening. So Chapter 70 is where it all begins. So Chapter 70 starts with our foundation budget. The 3 steps for Chapter 70 start with, one starts with our foundation budget, which is the amount that the state determines is adequate funding to provide for an adequate education for the students in Franklin. This year's foundation budget for FY23 reflects the second year of the Student Opportunity Act. The second step would be determining how much the community can afford to pay towards that foundation budget. And the third step backfills that local contribution, backfills the foundation minus the local contribution with state aid, with Chapter 70 money. So when we talk about the foundation budget, there are 3 key factors involved: enrollment, a wage adjustment factor, and inflation. And so our enrollment is across different categories. There are different rates associated with each of those 11 categories of expenses that you're aware of, and the department identifies a rate for each of those categories, applies it to our enrollment, and comes up with a foundation amount, which this year, for FY23, is preliminarily projected to be $12,058 per student. Then the state then decides how much Franklin can afford to pay by determining our local required contribution. The key factors involved with that are local effort from property wealth, effort from income, and a municipal revenue growth factor. Third step, backfill with state aid, but before we get to that, I will tell you this is how our local contribution has gone up over the past 12 years. Generally up 2 to 3% per year. We're at 71% right now. That's what the state expects us to contribute towards the foundation, what's adequate to provide education for Franklin. And that amount will cap at 82.5%. We anticipate we'll find that somewhere around 2028. So when we backfill with Chapter 70, there are 2 types of districts, a foundation aid district and a minimum aid district. Franklin is a minimum aid district. Basically what that means is they will hold harmless our Chapter 70 money, and we will we would not get anything more than an increase of $30 per pupil in accordance with the Student Opportunity Act. So the Student Opportunity Act has benefited many students across the Commonwealth in many districts, perhaps a little bit differently than it has benefited us in Franklin, but we have gotten some additional circuit breaker reimbursement for transportation. We've also gotten a higher level of charter school reimbursement through the Student Opportunity Act, and we've also seen an increase in our required local contribution. Right now, we are receiving $11 million more in Chapter 70 aid than we should be receiving in accordance with the formula, because our Chapter 70 aid is held harmless. That $11 million is second only to Boston, who receives $33 million in excess base aid. And then I've listed some other communities for you. Weymouth receiving $7.7 million, Billerica $8.1 million, Mansfield $6.8. So as a minimum aid district, we are only going to get an increase of that $30 per pupil in state aid.
So Miriam and I will talk to this next slide, which kind of numerically spells out the picture and the situation for Franklin. Our enrollment, which is based on October 1 enrollment numbers, had a decrease of 112 students, and this is for, this is not just Franklin Public Schools. This is a picture that pertains to all public school students in Franklin. So it also includes charter and Tri-County and the Norfolk agricultural students, so that's something to be aware of. But Franklin Public Schools is the predominant group of students here. So that's why if you see a number of 5,292 and you say, but wait a second, we have 4,840 students, that's the discrepancy that you're seeing there. But overall, for public education in Franklin, there is a change of 2% reduced enrollment, and that is happening across the public schools. The foundation budget is increasing, however, that expectation of what an adequate education is going up, despite the numbers going down by 4.5%. The Student Opportunity Act took a look at what it costs related to healthcare costs, what it costs to educate students whose first language is not English, special education students, as well as students from low-income backgrounds, and said that an adequate education costs more, and so our foundation budget has gone up by 4.5%. Consistent with what Miriam had just shared in terms of that required local contribution, the required local contribution to public school funding is going up, and it's going up by 5.55% towards the overall school spending. Backfilling with Chapter 78 is $28.7 million. That is going up only 0.5%. That's reflective of Franklin being a minimum aid community and only getting a $30 increase per pupil compared to last year. So this sort of overall, and this was consistent last year as well, tells the picture of how the dynamics are changing in terms of enrollment, the adequate education, and the local contribution as compared to what the state kicks in. Miriam, do you want to add anything to that?
So I would point out that the excess base aid is seen in this slide by subtracting the required district contribution of $44 million from the foundation budget of $62 million, which gives you roughly $17 million, which is what our Chapter 78 should be according to the formula. But because we're already receiving more than that, we're getting $28 million, the difference between those two being the $11 million. The other piece that I'll point out is the required net school spending, which is the bottom line on that slide. Net school spending has to at least be equal to the foundation budget. In our case, it's going to always equal the required district contribution plus your Chapter 70 aid. So in our case, that amount for next year is going up 3.54%, is $73.5 million. And you'll see a little bit more about net school spending. In FY20, we spent $7.6 million more than what is required for required net school spending. The amount, net school spending is the amount that, the minimum amount we need to spend on education to comply with the law. Generally, I would say 78% of districts in Massachusetts spend more than 11% over net school spending, which is where we are right now. Our 7.6 million is representative of 11.2% over what we're required to spend. And Massachusetts districts spend an average of 25% more than net school spending overall.
Net school spending and the amount spent compared to the requirement is one way that you might compare public school spending from one community to another. Another way that a lot of people think about is per pupil comparison, and we've compared the per pupil expenditure in Franklin to the state average, both for in-district per pupil expenditure and total per pupil expenditure, and it has consistently been less than the state average. And Franklin ranks in the 25th percentile. Put another way, 75% of districts in Massachusetts spend more per pupil. With that background context, we'll shift to talk about the FY23 budget, now that we've gone through a bit about state and local funding and how that comes together to contribute to the budget, as well as some of the trends that might be foreseen over the next couple of years. Miriam begins to put the budget together based on these assumptions.
So we are still awaiting an allocation from our town as to what our final allocation will be, but we do expect that to be an increase. We are assuming an 8% increase in our healthcare rates for our premiums. We don't have a final number at this point in time. We hope to get that in the next couple of weeks. The IAC, the Insurance Advisory Council, has met to discuss this issue. We have some options and that we're looking into, and it's just a matter of finalizing those options, and we should have that hopefully in the next month or so, next couple of weeks to a month. Our out-of-district tuition rates are coming in. We generally budget about 5%. Some placements will be higher than that. Some placements will be lower than that. That's based on where our students are placed, but we generally increase that at roughly about 5%. Our transportation rates are increasing roughly 3 to 4% for big yellow buses, as well as our vans that we contract with to transport students to out-of-district placements. And we are increasing our use of revolving funds by $515,000. And then in terms of a summary that you've seen before, the superintendent's recommended budget is in the amount of $70,216,996. That's a roughly $2.4 million increase, equating to 3.5%, 3.53%. And you can see the percentages here by category. Salaries, we anticipate going up 6.38%. Healthcare and Medicare costs overall as a category with all of those expenses combined up 1.35%. Our out-of-district tuition is going down as a result of being able to prepay some tuition this year, as well as an increased amount of circuit breaker funds being applied for next year based on what we will be receiving in the current fiscal year for our out-of-district circuit breaker claim. And then our other expenses are going up 5.25%, and transportation is going up just a new 1%. Restated graphically, again, an increase of 3.53% over FY22, $70.2 million. And as a whole, our budget, 77.2% of our budget goes towards salaries. Combined with healthcare, that's almost 88%, 87% combined with healthcare, salaries and healthcare. And out-of-district tuition at just under 5%, other expenses at 4.3%, and transportation at 3.5%.
As I had noted earlier, despite the enrollment decrease, we do have some specialized areas that we would like to focus on in terms of the student learning experience, and we've broken them up by level for you. So this represents a description or position for the elementary level. First, at Keller, we've proposed a literacy specialist at a budgeted amount of $75,000. This would be a second literacy specialist at Keller to support learning in the classroom for students, to support interventions, to support the coaching of our educators, and to provide curriculum support. We have an increased number of English learners, so we're proposing an English language learning teacher at Keller Elementary School. We are also proposing a paraprofessional, or ESP, to support English learners at Oak and Horace Mann. Based on the numbers they have there, there is a staff member that is shared between those two schools. And this year we had we had I think, a pretty successful substitute nurse plan where we had a floating nurse, LPN, go around the district if a nurse was going to be out. Right now, we don't have a good substitute plan when an English language learning teacher is out, and so having this floating paraprofessional when the EL teacher is out would help with continuity of services. We are proposing a special educator at the Kennedy Elementary School based on increased caseloads and needs there. And then we are seeing a need for very specialized reading teaching. And so there is a proposed Wilson language teacher proposed for the elementary level, school site to be determined, but probably shared across a few buildings to provide very specialized Wilson language support. We do have some special educators who are licensed or certified in Wilson, but we really could augment and have a need to augment that with a dedicated teacher. At the middle level, a couple of years ago, we started the New England Center for Children Partner Program that started with an earmark from Senator Spilka's office, which was much appreciated, recognizing that putting this into our district would was the most appropriate placement for the children, first and foremost, but would also be financially sound in terms of not having the students go out of district with higher tuitions than the amount you see on the slide. We expanded the program to Kennedy in subsequent years, and now the children are launching off to middle school. And so we have a proposal here for 2 ABA tutors and the required contract for contracted services with the New England Center for Children, and that would be at the middle level, site location to be determined. Additionally, again, recognizing that all across the district we have an increased number of English language learners, we're proposing another FTE at the middle level. And I'm going to skip the next one for a minute and talk about goals. Goals is another one of our specialized programs offered through the Office of Student Services for students who are on the autism spectrum. And we have a need for another teacher at the middle level, given the increased number of students, and that is at Remington Middle School is where Goals is housed. We're also proposing 2 teacher curriculum leaders. So we have, right now, we have stipended positions, and I had shared this at the last meeting. We have stipended positions at the middle level with teachers who are, for the most part, teaching full-time. We do also have math CETs that teach a 0.6 schedule. But quite frankly, they do a wonderful job, and they're leading their colleagues in department meetings and helping with professional development. But in terms of of having a guaranteed and viable curriculum across the major content areas in all 3 of our middle schools, and I think they need more support. And Dr. Rogers and Dr. Ashley can't do it all. They provide overall supervision and oversight, and they provide a critical link between the elementary and the high school from their central office positions, but in terms of kind of getting in deep and writing the actual curriculum would be out of their purview. And so these individuals would help, and that would be their responsibility, while the budget also continues to retain the stipends for the teachers so that they're providing teacher leadership within their buildings. At the high school, again, we're seeing an increase in our number of our English learners. I want to say the high school numbers are projected to be in the low 20s, which would be a lot for one person, in particular with the complexity of the high school schedule and the number of teachers that the English learning teacher interfaces with. So we're proposing an additional teacher there. The school committee last summer approved the restoration of the art director. This is formally folding this into the budget at an increase of $65,000. That increase reflects what we would budget for 0.6, because that was the part that was reduced from the budget previously, and I think that it's really important to restore the art director. You can go maybe a short period of time before you really start to you start to feel and start to lose that presence, that leadership presence. We have an increased number of students to be served in our REACH program. REACH is a K-12 program. This teacher and this ESP would be housed at the high school. REACH is a specialized program to support students with emotional and behavioral difficulties, and so we're proposing additional support there. I had noted in the last presentation that the high school has the largest number of students on IEPs, and although they have an assistant principal who primarily oversees the special education department, and they have one team chair, those are distinct roles. And with the reduction of the deputy principal a couple of years back, the assistant principal has only taken on more administrative responsibilities. And so additional team chair FTEs is very much needed to provide all of the procedural support and to attend to the needs of the multitude of students at the high school. And then lastly, Strive is another one of our K-12 programs, actually 12 plus. Many of the students in the Strive program continue on with us beyond their senior year and into that transition period as they pursue post-secondary pursuits. And based on the needs of some students in that program, we are proposing 2 additional paraprofessionals. And at the district level, we have 2 items in the budget from the superintendent's recommended budget. One is a van driver. Recently, the capital plan was approved by town council, and so we have the ability to purchase another van so that we can provide specialized transportation in district. We do need to hire a van driver. If we did not have a van and a van driver, we'd have to contract this out through contracted services, and there have been a number of reasons why we prefer to have that in-house, and we have, I think, a big enough need to be able to run that directly. And then district-wide, we are looking to support a student or a couple students with an academic tutor. And this is actually mostly student services or at the high school. This would support students who are in that post-secondary period, still supported by us through their IEP, and help them make the transition to higher education. This slide is a summary. So those positions, I think there's maybe 19 all told, amount to $1.2 million. We had also shared this at the last meeting, the school committee priorities that you had discussed in your workshop and a status there. We did bring back some additional information related to costs, particularly related to the world language teachers and world language program, just with some high-level estimates. So we had a good conversation about the prospect of adding world language at the elementary level, which is something that was reduced from the budget 15 years ago, maybe not quite that many, 12 or 13. And I think there ought to be and needs to be a lot more discussion and planning for what that would look like. The elementary principals are interested in doing that and would want to do that also with teacher input at the elementary level. There are also some other competing priorities. You may hear about how some of the music program was reduced at that same time, and so I think there's a fuller conversation to be had about what offerings are in the elementary level. So our recommendation is that there is a study committee next year to make recommendations for FY24. Just back of the envelope type of estimates. If you had world language K-5, 1 day a week, that would be mirroring something like our art or music specials and would be 4 FTEs across 5 buildings. You'd be looking at some additional stipend for the world language director, some curriculum development time, and some materials for each building. So I would estimate that to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $350,000, $360,000. I think programmatically, an essential question is how much world language time is the right amount of world language time for students to be receiving. And one of the things that I had heard as part of the story of eliminating it originally was that one day isn't enough. Recognizing that the school day is only so long, and if you're putting more subjects in, what are you taking away? And so there's, again, competing priorities that I think need to be looked at. But if you were to do 2 days of world language across K through 5, it would be more like our PE or wellness model, PE and health model, because the students have that twice a week, and that would be more like 7 staff members, additional stipends for the director of world language, some summer curriculum development time, and some materials. So I would estimate that to be more on the order of like 600,000 to 700,000. I also think too, it would be something to phase in over time. I think it would be difficult to recruit for definitely 7, would be difficult to recruit that many elementary world language teachers at the same time. So it would be something to kind of, to plan for out over a span of a couple of years. It also gives the teachers in grades 6 through 12 an opportunity to adjust their curriculum based on some of the learning that's happening with the younger students. So again, I think something to be studying and planning for, but I think people are interested, and I know families are looking for this at the elementary level. So just wanted to relay that back to you because it was a question that had come up at your last meeting. We also think consistent with that, library as a special is something that is kind of folded in to the elementary week. And so rather than moving to a library director now, be thinking about how that might fit in this overall elementary plan. And then there were some items that you had discussed that are related to some contract information, and negotiations are currently underway. So one of the things that I think is important to note in terms of being fiscally aware and fiscally responsible is that we are paying attention to our overall enrollment and looking to make enrollment-driven reductions where it makes sense and where it's possible, recognizing that we are also proposing to add positions to provide specialized supports. It's early to talk about it this time, but we are keeping our eyes on enrollment and have estimated about $575,000 at this time. Any staffing positions that would be here, we would anticipate through retirements and resignations that we would be able to absorb this through attrition, and it wouldn't affect people currently on staff. This graph shows over the last 15 years, in general, how we've been keeping up with that enrollment-driven reduction to maintain an average class size in recent years in the mid-19s for the elementary level. And so we do keep tabs on the school committee guidelines, which are 18 to 22 in grades K through 2, 22 to 25 in grades 3 through 5, and 22 to 26 at the middle school and high school. So similarly, as student enrollment has decreased in the last 5 years at the middle level, we've been keeping tabs on staffing and keeping an average class size of around 19 and a half in FY22. It's very difficult to graph that for the high school. And the high school schedule is so complex. They have had some pretty small classes and some pretty large classes. So it's a little bit harder to graph that. They have not seen the enrollment reduction, but we do anticipate that coming in subsequent years. One thing that came up at the last meeting, I just wanted to kind of put some information out related to positions in the district, recognizing additional student need over time. So although we have reduced some classroom teaching positions based on enrollment and focused on the school committee guidelines related to class size, we have added, and we noted in a slightly different way, some specialized positions that have been added despite the declining enrollment, which are on the next slide. We talked about the increase in the number of special educators, the increase in the number of school adjustment counselors, and the increase in number of nurses. And so overall, that just gives you a bit of a window in terms of how our FTEs are playing out at this time based on increasing student needs, keeping tabs with budget-driven enrollments, but also recognizing that there's additional specialized needs, and we're providing support to our buildings in adding those. But it's something to be planning for. Some of these are grant-funded through ESSER, and so something to be thinking about and planning for in the future. We do offset expenses with money from revolving accounts. So there in your budget book is a summary of different revolving accounts where tuition or fees come in, and then we pay certain areas. It has to be very specific and very targeted to those specific funds. Next year, we are proposing to add an additional $515,000, using $5.5 million in revolving funds to offset the expenses, which is putting the appropriation budget at $70,216,996, which is an increase of $2,396,171, or 3.53%. And this slide just summarizes what I had just shared related to the increase of FY23 over FY22. The hearing tonight is really about the FY23 operating budget and the line items in there, but we did summarize at the last meeting how we have spent coronavirus relief funds. Miriam will briefly walk through that.
Sure. So initially in FY21, we received CVRF money, coronavirus relief, in the amount of $1.1 million. That amount has already been fully expended primarily on the VLA program that was in existence last year, permanent building subs, digital learning interventionists, and other items you can see there. Our ESSER 1 grant was allocated at $123,235. At June 30th, we had some funding left over that we did, in fact, expend this year fully. It is finished, with elementary interventionists being funded from that grant. Our ESSER 2 grant has been submitted and approved. We are allocating $475,496 towards counselors and interns this year. Our nurse leader expanded role, permanent substitutes in the buildings. We used it to fund our summer learning academy this past summer, and we are currently funding interventionists with that money as well. We have already applied for and submitted our ESSER 3 allocation in the amount of $1,046,173. The plan was provided to the Department of Ed and has been approved. We are planning to use that money for the Bridge for Resilient Youth in Transition counselor program. It's being funded for 2 years at the middle level and the high school level, and along with that counselor would be an ESP in each of those locations. We will also plan to fund interventionists. Our diversity, equity, and inclusion director, a social worker, is being funded for 2 years, and we will plan to spend some of that money on after-school tutoring at the middle and high school level. So that money's already been planned and allocated in the amount of $1 million. Our ARPA money, American Rescue Plan, is primarily targeted towards special education. We were allocated $207,962, planning to use that for specialized program teachers to support our dyslexia program, ESPs, professional development and curriculum development, some program consultation services, tutoring for our homeschooled students, and we're going to plan to provide some additional accessible playground equipment and some specialized materials We also have an early childhood allocation through the American Rescue Plan of $22,950. And we are planning to use that for some additional occupational therapy services at the preschool, some trauma-informed professional development, some early literacy materials, and some fine motor skill development materials. And the sequence in terms of the funding over time, you can see here our ESSER 3 funding will go through the end of September 2024.
Before we move on to the next slide, I just want to pause for people who may be watching this. There is a bit of a narrative around the state, and actually, I think in the federal government as well, that a lot of the relief funds have not yet been received by districts or spent by districts, and I think it's raising a lot of questions and eyebrows about why. Thinking that we're perhaps being wasteful or dismissive of the funds. And I would just pause and note that Franklin and other districts had to submit a plan, in particular for ESSER 3. And you've seen how we've spent ESSER 1 and have been spending down ESSER 2. But knowing that ESSER 3 extends to 2024, there's been a very thoughtful, methodical, targeted approach here around stretching these dollars, recognizing that pandemic recovery is not going to take just 1 year. And so the money is planned for, and so I think that narrative around that you may hear out in the public, out in the newspaper, is puts us in a bad light, and is actually, I think, kind of harmful, given that these funds are planned for and are needed. So as is customary at this time of the budget season, we have, a budget here that is, kind of our best prediction. There are still some variables related to the overall budget, and the budget's an iterative process. We will, in the next several weeks, come to find out what the town's actual appropriation is. We did hear a bit from Jamie last week or the week prior around kind of the revenue model, which typically is somewhere in the order of $3 or $3.2 million on a given year in terms of what they expect. And so, 2.4 falls under that. But there are also other budgets out in the town, police, fire, DPW, et cetera. And so we need to wait and see what the final appropriation is going to be based on any more information that Jamie gathers related to local receipts, for example, and new growth. We are also always waiting at this time for the House and Senate budgets to come out. House comes out somewhere around April or May, and the Senate budget typically often comes out after July 1. In recent years, the governor, the Senate, and the House have been more closely aligned because of the Student Opportunity Act. And so I don't anticipate much change to happen with the Senate and House budgets, but there could be some slight tweaks to the overall formula, which may yield a little bit more in state aid or a little bit more in in circuit breaker that we sometimes see. And our legislators have also been supportive of us in terms of earmarks. And so that might be something that comes forward from one of our state senators. Contract negotiations are underway, so that is a variable. We make some assumptions, but that's a variable. There may be some further budget adjustments based on historical and actual spending that we can predict. So we have made tweaks in the past related to budget adjustments. Healthcare may be an area that comes in a little bit less than the forecasted prediction. And based on how we see our revolving funds shaping up towards the end of the year, may be able to apply additional revolving offsets if the town appropriation can't meet the $2.4 million. And we just caution continued use of federal stimulus funds. I think that they're planned to be used well. but we should be mindful in a couple of years when they expire. I would continue to think about ways in which to avoid the funding cliff. So tonight is the public hearing and budget discussion. We have a budget subcommittee meeting next Tuesday. We have an anticipated vote on the FY23 budget at the school committee meeting on April 12th. And this says April and May for Finance Committee and Town Council budget meetings. We heard from Jamie more recently than this slide was created that FinCom is going to be the week of May 9th. I don't know exactly when the school department will go, but it will be that week, and I think we have our own night. And then Town Council is May 25th and May 26th. And with that, that concludes our presentation. And typically at this time, the chair goes through the summary document, which is in your budget book. For anybody who is watching at home, the budget book is posted to the school department's website, and this is the FY23 budget. And people can pull it up on their phones or devices here in the audience. We do have a printed budget book over here by the table, if anybody wants to pick it up. And the lines are contained in the overview on page 43. And so Denise, as chair, will read the blue lines. For example, 1110, school committee total, $59,200. And then if you wanted to hold that, you would hold it. If not, she'll continue to read to the next blue line, 1210, superintendent's office.
I've been hydrating all day in preparation for this. So just really quickly, I just wanted to make just an opening statement, then we'll open it up. I'll start reading the line items. So tonight we continue our discussion on the FY23 budget. Afterwards, there will be time for questions, as this is a public hearing. We have a very specific budget timeline we adhere to. Our budget subcommittee, joint budget subcommittee, and the full committee have already met several times. At the April 12th full school committee meeting, we will vote on the FY23 budget, and after that, the Finance Committee and Town Council meetings will take place in April and May. As a reminder, the school committee is an autonomous board, just as Town Council is an autonomous board. We operate separately. The Town Council, in working with FinCom, as well as the Town Administrator, provide the bottom line for the school budget, which as a school committee, we always abide by. We live within our budget. This is our moral obligation. Our job is to present the community a budget that reflects our values, our goals, our critical needs, and provides information in an open and transparent way about how our funds are spent, how we are being fiscally responsible. This builds trust and helps citizens decide what they want their schools to be. At this time every year, we hear the schools get the biggest portion of the pie. And let's be honest, in every city and town in Massachusetts, the schools always get the biggest part of the pie. So while $70 million sounds like a lot, when compared to the real cost of a 21st century education, you will see that Franklin is spending at a level far below most other districts. It is impossible to continue to maintain level services while the cost of everything around us is continuing to go up. As noted in our presentation last week, the state is not funding Franklin as they've done in the past. They're expecting us to chip in more and more each year based on the relative wealth of our community. Now you factor in the increase of healthcare, transportation, out-of-district tuition, all things we have no control over. We always abide by the bottom line. We need to continue to make the community aware of what we have lost over the past few years and what we will continue to lose. The heart and soul of our schools are our teachers, our support personnel, all of our staff. We need to be able to attract and retain these individuals. Watch what happens if we don't keep our school district competitive. The citizens in any community make the decision about what they want their schools to look like. We as a school committee provide information so they can make the best choice. It is our moral obligation as public school advocates. So at this point, I will read each line item of the budget, and if any committee member, Elise, that counts for you too, Who wants to put a hold on anything, please indicate by stating hold, and we will come back to it. So I will begin by reading the Department of Ed function code and name, and if anyone wants a hold, please just go ahead and shout it out. Okay, so here we go. 1,110 school committee total. Wait, do I have to say the amount too? Oh, gosh, okay. 59,200.
Hold.
Okay. 1,210 superintendent's office total, 385,471.
Hold.
1,220 assistant superintendent's office, 183,590. 1,230 district administration, 28,434. 1,410 business and finance, 415,216. 1,420 human resources, 202,806. 1,430 legal services, school committee, $115,000.
Hold.
Okay. 1,435 legal settlements, school committee total, 0. 1,450 district-wide information data processing.
Hold.
All right. 165,250. 2,110 district-wide curriculum instruction, 930,136.
Hold.
2,120 department head curriculum specialist, 1,551,350.
Hold.
2,130 instructional technology leadership total, 542,904.
Hold.
2,210 principal's office, 3,488,487. 2,250 administrative technology, 49,910. 2,305 teacher's classroom, 26,025,517.
Hold.
2,310 teacher's classroom, special education, 8,419,553. 2,320 therapeutic services, 3,018,840.
Hold.
Hold.
All right. 2,324 long-term substitutes, 0. 2,325 substitutes, 556,200.
Hold.
All right. 2,330 educational assistants, 2,694,240. 2,340 librarians, 205,594.
Hold.
2,345 district distance learning, 11,000.
Hold.
2,352 instructional coach, 1,270,977. 2,354 instructional coach stipend, 175,040. 2,356 professional development, $197,000.
Hold.
2,358 vendor professional development, 61,400.
Hold.
2,410 textbooks, media, materials, 206,650.
Hold.
2,415 other instructional materials, library, 29,850.
Hold.
2,420 instructional equipment, 0.
Hold.
2,430 general supplies, 334,457. 2,440 other instructional services, 8,750. 2,451 instructional technology, 37,500.
Hold.
2,453 library technology hardware, 1,000. 2,454 instructional hardware, 160,974.
Hold.
2,455 instructional software, 180,774.
Hold.
2710 guidance counseling, 2,146,980. 2720 testing and assessment, 56,400. 2800 psychological services, 840,965. 3,200 medical health services, 1,022,960. 3,300 transportation services, 2,476,346.
Hold.
3,300 food services, 0. 3,510 athletics, 297,896. 3,520 other student activities, 159,600.
Hold.
4,130 utilities, 10,920. 4,450 technology maintenance, 898,411. 5,200 fixed charges insurance, 7,056,361. 5,500 other fixed charges, 68,000. 9,000 out of district total, 3,469,087.
Hold.
All right. Give me a sec. All right. So now we'll go back. All right, so first up, we have 1110 school committee total, Elise.
Great. So I just asked my question, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering what contracted service do we get for the 41,000? Is that consultants for redistricting or the superintendent search? In one of the memos, Dr. Hernett said something about the superintendent search, but then I was wondering why we'd be looking at that in FY23 instead of now. I just need a little clarification on that 41,000.
So the $41,000 is an estimate for a consultant for the superintendent search. And based on whatever direction the school committee decides to go in, that's a placeholder right now. If you feel that you wish to reduce that, certainly that's something that you can consider.
Are you good?
Okay, yeah, I guess through the chair, just, so it's a placeholder for next year. So in case we don't come to a agreeable decision this year, we have money to spend next year just in case. Is that right, Miriam?
You do have money for a search for a consultant if you decide that that's the avenue you want to go. Whether you're choosing to hire an interim superintendent or choosing to hire a superintendent, certainly that's the committee's decision to make. And if you feel as though you don't need to have a consultant for next year, then that is money that can be reduced. But that is a placeholder for a consultant right now, given that I was not sure quite at the time when the budget was developed as to which direction you were going to take.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
We'll let you know.
We have been working on this through the month of January and early February. I think we finalized this before February break, so it's a placeholder.
All set, Elise?
All set with that one.
All right. 1210, Superintendent's Office. Elise?
That's me too. So again, it's a contracted services question. So we've got a reduction in $20,000. So I'm just wondering sort of how that looks. Like how is that being felt in the office there?
So that 20,000 reduction reflects that the equity audit will be concluded by the end of this year, and so we don't need to budget for it next year. But there is money continued to be budgeted for a master facilities plan consultant, redistricting consultant for the space needs subcommittee if you choose to use it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, next, 1430, Legal Services School Committee. Al?
Yep, so thank you. So I'm glad to see that it's remaining static across the 2 years. Historically, how much of that have we used? And what's the actual spend?
So you can see the last 3 years have ranged anywhere between 73,000 in FY19, 61,000 in FY20, and 56,000 in FY21. I think that this amount is an estimate, depending on what types of events might take place throughout the course of the year. This is a negotiation year, so I would expect that we would spend a little bit more in negotiations in legal services as a result of our attorneys being present for those negotiation sessions and planning for that. This could be one area of reduction if we needed to do that to meet the town's number.
Yeah, and I guess to follow up on that one, so you mentioned legal services negotiations are a driver for us to use this budget. What other things are causing us to use this budget? Are they I know we had a claim from a citizen. What else is attributing to that?
So our legal services are pretty comprehensive, and there are a number of attorneys with whom we work. Some work on kind of the labor side, which would include things like contract negotiations. It might include anything that arises that would involve employee discipline or dismissal, if that were to come to pass, or a claim against the district related to employees. We do also have attorneys that we work with related to student services, so they may provide us with some legal support related to matters including investigations and discipline. They also may provide support related to special education and student services, particularly if things escalate and there are complaints against the district through the Department of Education or other avenues. Our attorneys do help provide some support to us in kind of documenting and providing what we need to respond. So
Okay.
Student services and kind of employee personnel matters.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All set?
And policy, we do run policies by them as well, and contracts.
Procurement.
Yep, contracts for around procurement. And we do run some of your policies by them as well.
Thank you.
Set?
Yes.
Okay. Right, 1450, district-wide information data processing. Megan?
Yeah, is that, how does that work? Is that something we do internally? Do we sub that out? What does that entail?
Sure. So this line item is specific for the software that runs many of the different data programs that we're using. For example, Aspen is our student information system. SNAP is our nursing program that we track data. Library, we have a library software platform. We also have School Gate Guardian for folks entering buildings. So that's what the line item as a whole is for. The increase that you're seeing in that line item is due to the maintenance costs for the 10 gig firewall that was purchased last year. It was purchased last year with a 1-year warranty, which is now coming to an end. And so this is the cost for the warranty,
Right.
for the maintenance.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dave?
My question was answered, thank you.
Okay, all right, perfect. 2110, district-wide curriculum instruction. Elise?
Okay, how's my audio when I keep talking? Is it okay?
Yes.
All I did was move my water glass.
Oh, all right.
I don't know. All right, 2110. Okay, so what contracted service do we get for the extra 16,000?
So Dr. Ashley is working with a group, or seeks to work with a group to provide some external help and review related to our literacy instruction, K to 12.
Okay, super. So that sounds like it's consistent with our request for sort of horizontally aligning curriculum through the elementary and middle schools.
Yeah, so this would be some assistance related to horizontal and vertical alignment of ELA and literacy. It has been some time. It also is consistent with this idea that we're moving towards a kind of proactive model of curriculum review rather than being reactive to any changes that the Department of Education makes to the frameworks, which is the kind of status we've been in for the past several years. This is kind of proactive curriculum review, and ELA is an area of focus.
Super. That's great to hear. Thanks. All set.
Okay. 2120, department head curriculum specialist. Dave Callahan?
Thank you. Can you just elaborate or kind of give a breakdown of where the increase is going to?
Sure. The majority of the increase is as a result of the department head category, 2120. There's an added team chair in that category, as well as the reinstated portion of the art director, and then wage increases that are anticipated for all of the department heads in that category. The other portion of the increases go towards anticipated wage increases, and the DLIs are in that category, principals are in that category, and then there is a decrease in administrative technology, which is primarily things like copier supplies and things that are technology related to the administrator's office.
So some added positions and also increases in existing positions as well?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
2130, instructional technology leadership. Dave McNeil?
Yes, thank you. Could you please expand upon how the digital learning integrationist positions that were created during the pandemic will continue to improve the students' educational experiences going forward?
Sure. Do you mind if I defer to Lucas, who's been working very closely with them?
Of course.
Great, thank you for the question. So our digital learning integrationist, just to go back in time, we were advocating for these positions prior to the pandemic, seeing a need. As you know, our school system has made some tremendous investments in our infrastructure, the hardware that our teachers and our students use, and our software that our teachers and students are using. So we were advocating for, if you're going to invest the amount of money that we invest in Chromebooks and one-to-one devices, teacher laptops and whatnot, making sure that we're utilizing those to their fullest potential. So in advocating for those pre-pandemic, we weren't able to get those into the budget. When the pandemic hit, we were fortunate enough to add those positions. In my opinion, I think if we had had them prior to that, it might have helped us build up some capacity, but I'm really proud of the work that our teachers did, our leadership, and the DLIs have been coming on board to really move, and I know the word pivot is overused, I've heard it twice today, Mrs. Marner, in the meeting, but they really, everyone really pivoted to make that a successful transition. So with that said, our DLIs really work to support the software. We have over 70 software learning, digital tools that students use to directly impact students. That's some that support the curriculum, some that support student growth and learning, and they support those items. Every single piece of software that a student logs into is required to meet the data privacy standards. So folks at home, every tool that we use has to be vetted through our DLIs and then through a system that allows us to contract with every single piece of software they use to ensure that they won't use student data in an inappropriate way, and we contract through that. You heard earlier this year at some of the school committee meetings when Dr. Hearn provided a report of the DLIs impacting and influencing the PD in which we provide. So they've been really hands-on on a few of our PD afternoons and full-day PDs to really, professional development, to really help our teachers build our capacity in a variety of tools. Separate to that, they've also worked on some on-demand PD and PD in your pajamas. I think you may have heard that referenced.
Yep.
So we've tried to build a more holistic framework for training our teachers. All that said, they also have opportunities throughout the week where teachers can reach out and say, hey, I want to try this, I'm looking for some help. So they're co-teaching and co-planning with teachers K through 12. So they continue to be served to really help us move the work forward in these particular areas. And they have really worked hard to put together a multi-year plan and strategy for how we can move the work forward in those particular areas. The digital learning standards came out. Dr. Hearn just mentioned sometimes we're beholden to when a standard is put out. In 2016, those came out. We started with a district-wide committee, but recognized we needed more support. So those individuals just done a great job to move the work forward.
Thank you very much. I think that's a wonderful highlight of how positions that were brought on board during the pandemic with relief funds are being folded in and continuing to add value to the students' educational experience. So thank you.
All right, 2305, Teacher's Classroom, Elise.
Okay. My question's about the Lexington plan sick day buyback. So why is there such a discrepancy between the FY approved and then revised figures for that?
Sure, so the reason for that is because we budget in a lump sum in one category for the Lexington plan and the sick leave buyback. We don't often know who we're going to pay sick leave buyback to until the end of the year. We also, for the Lexington plan, we budget it in one lump sum, but it could be attributable to multiple individuals who might be in this category, who might be in a teaching specialist category, who might be in a counseling category or psychologist category. But as a whole, we budget it in one lump sum and then transfer out as needed based on where the actual increase takes place. So that's why you see the decrease down. Because that money's been transferred out. It's not because we haven't spent it, it's because it's been spent in a different line item.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. All right. That gets my follow-up question too. Thank you, Miriam.
You're welcome.
All set.
Okay. 2320, Therapeutic Services, Dave Callahan.
Can you just elaborate on the increase for the contracted services?
That is the line that reflects the expansion of the NEC partner program to the middle school. So that is the contracted services piece that we pay to NEC.
And that the figure as well, is that precise? Is that or just an estimate?
Oh, it's
kinda
pretty
see-
precise.
That's right on the nose, okay.
It's pretty precise, yeah. It just happens to be a round number,
That's,
but,
yeah, anytime I see that round number, I kinda,
but I can tell you that Mrs. Morano, when she puts together her budget, she knows exactly where those contracted services are going. And they're all outlined specifically as to how much is going where.
okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
It's like you filled your gas and you hit it right on the zero.
Right.
I tried.
It's exciting.
Yes. Did you
What I
really
try
just
to do.
question Miriam? Elise, you also had held this one.
It was the same question though, so you got it, Dave.
All right.
Thanks, Elise.
Okay, 2325 substitutes, Dave McNeil.
Yes, thank you. Are substitute salaries being reduced because we expect to have fewer substitutes?
Yes, and we are also, the majority of this reduction is because we are changing our model of PD. So this line item is reflecting a portion of subs that we allocate for professional development. We are no longer having professional development during the course of the school day, which would require a sub. But because of the way we're restructuring that program, we would need fewer subs, which are less available today, these days anyway, to be able to support that. So that's why the line item is decreasing.
If I could just jump in for a second, I think we're doing less. I don't think we've necessarily done away with professional development during the school day for which a sub might be needed, but for a couple of reasons. In part because it's been very difficult to get subs, and we want to have teachers, working with students in their classroom, trying to find alternative ways using the professional development time and the half days and the faculty meetings for some PD. So we're not completely opposed to the idea of having some in-service days, but given the difficulty with subs and just making sure that there's that student-to-teacher connection, we're doing far less of it.
Thank you.
2340 librarians, Dave McNeil.
Yes, thank you. Could you please touch on what has been lacking at Franklin High since a full-time library and media specialist was taken, and what value this restoration will bring?
Sure. So a couple of years back, as part of some budget adjustments that happened, I want to say for FY20, as a stopgap measure, one of the measures was to have the full-time librarian become a part-time librarian, part-time English teacher, and we did that for kind of the pandemic year. And the person is licensed in both subjects, and we got through. We have since restored her to a full-time library position, which is important for a couple of reasons. One is the services that are provided to students within the library in terms of choice books that they can select and maintaining kind of a current collection. Also working with educators and teachers on projects that may be done, including research. And there are some pretty significant sanctions that can come in two forms. One is you put your accreditation with NEAS&C, New England Association of Schools and Colleges. You put your accreditation at risk if you don't have a full-time librarian at your high school. And so we wanted to restore that as quickly as possible, and it's being reflected now in your budget, but she's been full-time this year and is now, again, reinstated formally in the budget. The other consequence that can happen is that library services can shut off some of your subscriptions for some of the research databases if you don't have a full-time librarian at your high school. And so those are some of the concerns in not having a librarian full-time, in addition to the services that the highly skilled, trained individual brings to curating that collection and providing supports, including current supports in terms of media literacy to students across the whole school.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a perfect example of something that's lacking. Not only are the students at a loss for the direct services that are being provided, but also with accreditation and other resources that could be taken away. It's truly an investment. So thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome. 2345 distance learning, Al?
Can you just elaborate a little bit on this one?
Sure, this is a very specific and niche item in your budget. It is a software program called Edmentum that is used at the high school, and it is one avenue for credit recovery for students who need, if they have failed a course, to gain credit back.
Okay.
So that's the kind of licensing fee.
So in this situation, like if the student was hospitalized or something like that, is that what the case for the distance learning, or?
I think it's more if a student has failed a class, and Lucas may jump in. If a student has failed a class, it's an opportunity to make up that class through kind of a distance learning environment. If a student is hospitalized, and they qualify through a physician statement, we would provide home tutoring.
Thank you.
2356, professional development. Elise?
So this question's actually 2356 and 2358, if that's okay, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. I'm wondering just what's the difference between PD, professional development and vendor professional development?
2356 professional development is for teachers going out to a particular professional development workshop or something to that effect. It also covers the cost of course reimbursement for courses that they might take in accordance with the contract. 2358 is for vendors who are coming in to provide professional development, so a consultant who might come in and provide some literacy professional development would be charged to 2358.
Okay, gotcha, that makes sense. So I just thought there was like a redistribution there, but an overall decrease in funding in professional development. So how's that going to affect the quality and quantity of PD in FY23?
So Miriam can chime in and add anything to what I say, but there is, kind of a shift happening in the PD accounts. We also have a grant, the Title IIA grant, and so some of the items have been realigned from the Office of Teaching and Learning with Lucas and Linda and Tina and Paula, kind of taking a look at the Title IIA grant, which had been kind of overseen by Joyce, kind of making some shifts and allocating things a little bit differently. So we still are committed to providing professional development and high-quality PD to faculty and staff in a variety of ways. This is just more aligned with kind of our current spending and vision going forward.
Okay, understood. And as I think Lucas was saying earlier about the DLIs doing some PD, maybe having more internal, staff and faculty running PD sessions also.
Yeah, we're trying to balance that with some of the choice days and opportunities, yep.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. All set.
2410, textbooks, media materials. Dave McNeil?
Yes, I held a few of these materials ones all together, so for the sake of expediency, I'll just lump them all together here. So with the 2410, 2415, 2420, 2451, and 2454, they're all materials and equipment that are being cut, and already materials, technology, and equipment only account for 1.37% of the budget. So what are these being cut from?
Good question.
So specifically to the textbook account, that's a shift in from a central account from textbooks into the digital materials account, digital software subscriptions, which is $24.55. So you'll see that line item has increased $44,000. So that's where that shift has taken place from that textbook line item. In terms of 2415 and 2420, those are items that are at the principal's discretion to determine whether they have a need in those categories or feel that their building could be better supported by utilizing those funds elsewhere. The 2451 instructional technology account is reduced by $36,000. That's the cost of Chromebook insurance. We have newer devices, and so the cost to insure newer devices is less than the cost to insure older devices. So that accounts for that decrease. And in 2454, this is a category that is aligned at a total of $45,730 in the category. It's more aligned with current and prior year spending. Your There's an appearance of a decrease because there was a transfer this year for one-time purchase of copiers. And so it looks like it's a decrease, but in fact, the 45,000 is a little more in line with the prior year spending of between $21,000 and $58,000 over the past 3 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
2455, instructional software, Dave Callahan.
Actually, Miriam just answered my question. With
Easy
that, Thank you
peasy.
very much.
All right.
You're welcome.
3300, transportation services, Dave McNeil.
Yes, thank you. So we're seeing just all throughout this category, just a number of shifts, some cuts and some increases here. So I'm just wondering, what are the reasons behind these?
Yeah, so transportation is one of those categories that has shifted in the past few years because of the pandemic. When we shut down at the end of 2020, we realized the savings. Even though we paid our vendor, we paid them less than we would have typically paid because they weren't providing the level of services that we needed. So that year was a little bit less than, and then in last year we were in hybrid mode. So that year was also less in transportation relative to big yellow buses. You are seeing some increases in foster care transportation. You're seeing some increases in homeless transportation or transportation of homeless students. And you're seeing some increases in van cameras, which is the other expense category in terms of spending over the past 3 years. And that's as a result of having additional vans in the fleet and having to replace some of the cameras due to the age of the cameras. So that's where some of the fluctuations in spending over the past 3 years have come from. Our out-of-district transportation costs, we anticipate going up as well next year. And while we might be running fewer big yellow buses, our rate is in fact going up because we are in the first year of a 5-year contract next year.
Thank you very much.
Can I?
And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And we also have a new van driver, as budgeted, as presented earlier, based on the addition of a new van in the fleet as approved by the capital budget.
Can I ask a transportation question?
Please.
How much of the transportation budget is subsidized by Franklin Public Schools, specifically the yellow buses?
Yeah, so we take in fees, and approximately those fees offset about 40% of the budget. So we would pay about 60%, and the fees would offset about 40%.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Next, 3520, other student activities, Dave Callahan.
Thanks. Can you just elaborate on what this line item is going towards?
Sure. This is for stipends for clubs and advisors, for teachers to provide after-school support to students via clubs and advisors. You saw the DECA students here tonight. We have a tremendous amount of club activity going on at the high school and the middle school levels. It's also an area that funds graduation and supplies and materials for clubs and activities, as well as other expenses that might be related to competitions, like I can think of math competitions or academic decathlon type competitions, and those are funded through this category.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Last one, 9,000 out of district, Elise.
Okay. So there were some big changes here, and let me just remember what I was looking at. I guess sort of just an overview of the big changes. Obviously, we have to be careful about confidentiality since there are low numbers of students here, but there's some big shifts in the numbers in different categories, and I guess just sort of an overview of what's happening.
Yeah, so this is based on where we anticipate students to be placed next year. The reason for the large decrease is because we have an opportunity to prepay tuition in accordance with Mass General Law. This year, we can pay up to 3 months of tuition into private placements. And we are also anticipating an increase in our circuit breaker reimbursement by $335,000. So when that funding is received this year, it would be applied towards next year's costs, and it will reduce the budget overall because it's a higher reimbursement. So that's the reason for the large decrease in that account.
Okay, so that 335,000 we get now in FY '22, but then we use that to prepay.
So that we have to use that in a year in accordance with the law. So we always keep a year in the bank as we can. We would keep a year in the bank to offset costs for tuition for the following year. Prepaid tuition is going to be a separate expense based on favorability in the budget.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
All set.
Okay. All right, I guess we'll just go do a little bit of round robin, just follow up. Any more questions, comments? Camille?
No, thanks.
Dave?
No.
Aaron? Dave?
No, just thank you all for your hard work.
Elise?
Yeah, I have a couple. I wasn't quite sure where to ask them. Is the cost for the Williams James interface in here? Are we doing that again in FY '23?
It is. It is located in
1220.
1220 Assistant Superintendent's Office Contracted Services.
Okay, gotcha. Because I know that there's been some, I don't know, difficulties, challenges, or frustrations. They're just so overwhelmed there that some districts are deciding not to enroll with them again and do something different as far as like hiring somebody in district to do it or split that with another district partners or trying to be creative and just trying to, hustle and somehow get the mental health and, well-being supports for kids and families because it's just so hard. And William James the interface was such a great resource for so long and now it seems like they're really swamped.
Yeah, so we get a report from them periodically, and they did share that I think 59 individuals in Franklin have been supported by the William James service so far this year. But knowing that they're having, some challenges in making those matches and placements, it is something that I think, is worthy of a conversation. You want to jump in?
Just briefly, Mrs. Morano and I attend a meeting with William James and the community partners that they partner with each year to discuss kind of their outlook and what they see. And then that gives us an opportunity to sign an annual agreement. So we will be in the same boat as other districts. So, and another note, Mrs. Morano and I had a meeting this morning with a community-based group that offers some similar supports for students. So we're continuing to try to build out as many resources as possible for our students and our families in the community, and not just rely on one particular resource. But it's a good point, and I think the reality is it's really hard to connect kids and families with the mental health supports they need, and I think we're all realizing and seeing that now. So it's a good comment.
Yeah, definitely. And I wonder if the social worker that we get, that could maybe be one of the responsibilities that person could maybe help a little bit of the many hats I'm sure that person will wear.
Absolutely. I think that is an opportunity for the social worker that'll work with families and students across the entire district to make those connections. I will also share too that through an earmark from Senator Spilka's office, we are planning a universal mental health assessment for grades 8 and grades 10 later on this spring. They were not able to undergo a screening in grades 7 and grades 9, which we typically do through the wellness program. So that's through an earmark through Senator Spilka's office, and I have requested that we receive it again next year. I don't know if she'll support that in terms of its continuation because it's kind of a one-time fund, but it's an area that I would recommend that the district think about incorporating into the operating budget because as part of these universal mental health screenings, which will be optional. Families, there's a consent process for families to do. There's a parent education component, there's a staff education component. But we're working with an outside group from Wellesley Centers for Women, and they have their own clinicians working with students, working with families to then make some matches if there are students that rise and are of concern based on the screenings. It takes something off of the plate of our counselors, although our counselors, of course, would be in a position to support students should there be an agreement around sharing information with the schools. So we are actively seeking out other opportunities, particularly to connect students with some more intense and long-term services outside of the district. Our counselors are wonderful, but they have a specific role within the school setting, and we know that there are students and families who need additional supports beyond what we can provide during a very brief school day.
Thank you. I have another.
Go ahead.
Okay. It's about ECDC. So again, I couldn't tell it, it wasn't really teased out in the overall budget, but it was in the ECDC budget. So those are little guys. They've lived, most of their lives or half their lives in COVID. And so they're, vulnerable, and their development is being affected dramatically. So I was glad to see the 46% increase in the ECDC funds, but I guess I sort of just wanted to know some details about how's that looking? Where's that going specifically?
Well, so I'll say that I know we have added a new classroom at the ECDC with some additional ESPs. It's on page 49. We do have about $800,000 offset from the preschool tuition revolving account to support the preschool as well. The majority of the funding is, the majority of the increase is going towards anticipated wage increases, as well as for teachers and for ESPs and other employees. There was an increase in the discretionary budget for the school based on the enrollment, which is probably as high as it's ever been since I've been in this district, which is great. So I think that's where the focus is, and I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything.
Yes, we're also using some grant funding to increase the occupational therapy services, as well as grant funding to, we haven't finalized it yet, but either a social worker or a full-time BCBA to also support students over there. We're trying to decide which role will best meet the needs of the incoming students that we're anticipating this summer. So
That's awesome. Thank you for clarifying. That's helpful. One last, Madam Chair. It's a quick one. It's quick.
Of course, go ahead.
In Oak Street, there was a $64,000 increase in the health services salary, and I just wasn't sure what that is, if that's a new position or what that is. It's, there's a line item. I can find it.
I do see it.
Right.
I'm thinking about that. I think that's the cost of the nurse that shared with Horace Mann at the complex, as well as the cost of the LPN. So there's two full-time equivalents in that category. And I'm just wondering if maybe there was some turnover in that category. I'll have to check back with you on that one.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks.
What's the
nurse.
line?
Oh, it's 3,200.
3,200.
I actually have the salary piece here.
We'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Are you all set, Elise? Okay.
I just want to say, I think the district's doing a great job of, managing to increase services while the state funding is simultaneously decreasing. So that's all I have to say.
My turn. All right. Like Elise, I didn't know where to insert these, so I saved them for the end. So where we are now compared to, say, 2019, 2018, students are returning with different needs. We've been talking about supports, districts, and the district's priorities moving forward. Can you point us to the budget items that would be supporting the district's priorities in supporting the students moving forward?
So I think I would point to our presentation, which highlights some of the areas for strategic investments and initiatives, particularly focusing on those specific needs related to English learners and special education services. But also, as part of the story, folding in some of those grant-funded positions, like the digital learning integrationists. We increased the number of nurses, and COVID is certainly in a different place than it had been over the past couple of years. But we are seeing students with more increased medical needs, and I think there is still a little bit of uncertainty, and we need to be flexible and make sure that we're ready to adapt. Should there be a new subvariant of concern, and COVID has another spike. I think too, as far as nursing goes, there are some things that are kind of regularly maintained over the course of a particular year, and we haven't been paying as much attention to those things. And Paula could probably give you a couple more examples off the top of her head, but I'm thinking some of our typical like health screenings, vision screenings, hearing screenings. And so we've maintained a high level of nursing services for that reason. We continue to think about social and emotional well-being. I think we've added, kind of adjustment counselors across the district, but very specifically in applying ESSER funds, and again suggesting that you think about how this gets folded into the operating budget in the future, supporting bright counselors, which would focus on students with higher clinical needs, students who may be in hospitalized settings who are coming back into the district and need kind of that transition support in order to pick back up with their academics. Could also be students who have experienced a concussion, so it's not just folks who have been hospitalized, but also concussed students may come in and need those bright services. Those are a few of the areas kind of off the top of my head. So some of them are highlighted very specifically here, but I appreciated too the very thorough review that you did of nearly all, not all, but nearly all of the lines in the budget, because I think you're also seeing how expenses have shifted and the reduction of textbooks. We do still have textbooks. I know that's been a conversation that's come up at Capitol. We do still have books. I think it's important to have those print materials, but you are also seeing a shift into more digital subscriptions and a process with personnel to make sure that those digital subscriptions are worthy of use in the classroom. They're not kind of arbitrary, and they also meet our expectations for student safety and student privacy. We are continuing to support other areas like interventionists through grant funding, again, in a year or two, considering where students are with their academic assessments, and the NWEA MAP assessment will help you make that decision. How many interventionists get folded into the operating budget is also something that I would suggest you think about and consider. We have identified through the pandemic areas of inconsistency in our curriculum. I think that was kind of pointed out when we brought students from all of our elementary schools into the VLA and saw how many differences there were in terms of curriculum and instruction. And so the budget also focuses on high quality professional development, high quality instructional materials, and the support of our directors of curriculum in terms of implementing that into our classrooms, with math being a focus this year, and it will continue to be an area of focus, but ELA coming online as part of the curriculum review.
Thank you very much. You had brought up the NEASC. Do we know when the next review will happen?
We are at the midpoint, so we are somewhere near the 5-year the 5-year mark. And so in a couple of years, the high school will need to be thinking about its self-study.
And I appreciate you discussing the differences between the elementary classes when we did the VLA. And I know at the last meeting I had asked for enrollment numbers. So I'm looking right now, you know, talking about, you know, equitability. You know, we have a kindergarten class in Jefferson with 12 students and kindergarten classes in Keller with 21. The education that I feel the kids at Keller get is completely different between the students at Jefferson or Parmenter. I know that we're looking at a facilities, space needs committee right now, but between now and whatever decision we make, I mean, are we going to be adding more staff at Keller to address the fact that there's 2 schools in one building, but still not enough staff to deal with all of the students? I mean, because I'm hearing that teachers are getting hurt and kids are getting hurt and services aren't being met. So I'm just wondering are we building into this budget, adding staff anywhere?
So there's 19 staff members proposed in the budget to be added, several of which are proposed to be added at Keller. We are also looking to have class sizes within your guidelines. We purposefully did not, because we were coming out of the pandemic and coming into this year, we were purposefully sort of, I think, waiting to see what was happening with the real estate market, waiting to see what was happening with enrollment. Kindergarten and first grade have been among some of the hardest areas to predict because of the choices that parents of young children made. So there are places where we didn't receive as many students as we had expected, and some places where we received more students than we expected. But I think from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, keeping an eye on class size guidelines and having them be 18 to 22 K-2 and 22 to 25 in grades 3 through 5 would be kind of the target. And if we can do that equitably across the district, then that's great. We are looking to add an additional section. I can't remember what grade level it is at Keller, but we had a few move-ins that put the numbers pretty high in one grade level. We had a long-term sub come in because a teacher was out on leave. When the teacher came back from leave, we kept the long-term sub on to provide an additional measure of support to that grade in particular. And we would look to continue with that number of sections going forward in order to bring the class sizes down. We saw too so not only in kindergarten and grade 1 did we see some things that were a little unpredictable, but the market, especially at the elementary level, was a little unpredictable last year with the move-ins. So we saw a decline in the Parmenter population that we didn't expect, and we saw an increase at Kennedy in particular, and I think we also saw a slight increase at Jefferson. So we do our best to kind of forecast and predict to create equitable sections across the district. But the additional staff that are being proposed tend to be folks that are more in the supportive areas surrounding the teachers, so that the class sizes are still within your guidelines, but that the teachers have additional adults supporting them in specialized ways, whether it's special education, English learners, literacy specialists, and so that's what this budget reflects.
What about because I know at the last meeting too, I had asked about special education numbers for like IEP plans? Like
We have those, and before we jump over to Paula, who brought those with her, I also just want to reflect, like, I'm concerned if there's rumors around people getting hurt or students getting hurt or this or that. I think I think we take great care to keep kids safe, and we have protocols and we have practices to keep kids safe. And so I just would caution against anything that may be kind of chattered about. We do try to provide people with accurate information as we're able within the confines of privacy.
All right, so, yes, last week you asked about caseload sizes, so I have for special educators, I don't have related service providers tonight, but the average caseload size at our elementary schools is 12, which range from 11 students to 13 students, for the special educators. At the middle school, the average caseload is 10, and those caseload sizes range from 9 to 12 for each, liaison. And at the high school, the average caseload is 12, ranging from 11 to 14. Again, I caution that number because it's not all, I mean, any of our special educators will tell you, it's not about the numbers, it's about the services provided to the student, which is part of the IEP. So, once, you can't compare one student with special needs to another student. It really depends on their needs and the amount of services they require to access their curriculum. So I do caution that as just using that as the one number. There's more behind the story.
Perfect, thank you very much. All right, I think I have just one more, let's see. So, correct me if I'm wrong. So my understanding is that the elementary math and reading specialists who used to regularly pull out advanced and accelerated students for extra challenges, they haven't really been able to do this since the pandemic started because of the overwhelming need for the students who need extra help. So will the specialists be able to go back to also supporting the needs of accelerated and advanced elementary students in reading and math? Or would supporting the needs of our higher performing students require additional positions and funding?
Linda and Tina are here, and they work very, very closely with our math and literacy specialists. I might defer to them, and then I'll chime in as well.
So, I have to think about that for a minute, but, so our literacy specialists don't just, so I guess let's talk about the difference between a literacy specialist and interventionist. I think that might be helpful, because I think there might be some confusion, because it is kind of the terms are interchanged once in a while. So we have professional literacy specialists, which have a specialized degree in reading, and they kind of oversee or manage and facilitate the interventionist. So we kind of have each elementary school has a certified professional literacy specialist, and then we've been able to, through the budget, to due to the pandemic, and get interventionists who work directly with kids to provide targeted intervention. But the literacy specialists are the ones who kind of facilitate, manage, plan, look for materials. They meet with the interventionists continually to look at data, see how the kids are doing. So the interventionists are kind of boots on the ground, right with the kids. The literacy specialists are also working with children. They're also in classrooms. They're providing coaching to teachers. They're providing professional development. We have a common planning time structure where teachers meet in grade level teams during the course of a month on a rotating basis, along with the math specialists. And they are providing instructional coaching. They come together, they look at the kids' data. Okay, let's look at a new unit of study. We're going to be doing a nonfiction unit. How are we going to meet the tiered levels of instruction in the classroom? So the literacy specialist might be, okay, we have some high flyers. How are we going to meet their needs? How are we going to meet our core tier 1 curriculum, and how are we going to provide intervention? So they'll do that. So they're more of a facilitator, manager, kind of the professional eyes and ears. The interventionists are more take kind of direction from the literacy specialists, if that makes sense. So within the Reader's Workshop model, we're glad we don't just have one book that all kids read in Franklin. So kids are reading, I was in classrooms today at Keller, and kids are reading all kinds of books. They're reading nonfiction, they're reading thick books, thin books, books they love, books they're interested in. The teacher's pulling guided reading groups, so the teacher might be reading with 4 different groups a day, but not just like when we went to school where everybody's you're in the one reading group all the time, but they're mixing it up constantly, and the literacy specialists help with that. So I can say in the world of literacy, we are meeting the needs of our high achievers within that workshop model.
So then I can speak to the math side of it in the elementary schools. What I would say has been the focus for this year has been around ensuring that we are using our new illustrative math program with integrity. And I don't mean fidelity and lockstep, but I mean we're using it as it's intended. because it's a research-based, high-quality resource, and what Dr. Ahern alluded to before, in students coming to the VLA, and having inequitable or different learning opportunities created some challenges. So really our focus this year is to do that with integrity. And then there's actually just this past week, a survey went out to teachers that said, what are the 3 greatest strengths that we're finding within this curriculum? And then what are some of the 3 greatest challenge areas? And so the work of the specialists this year has been in the classroom, professional learning support, they're teaching lessons. If a teacher is out of the classroom, the specialist is in the classroom teaching that lesson so the students don't miss a lesson. You know, so there's a lot of that happening along with the professional development support that's embedded. And so really our goal in collecting this data is to say, how can we move that work forward next year? And report cards are happening, so they have a few weeks to respond to the survey. Mm-hmm. And what I'm seeing as trends so far is folks saying, how can we work to differentiate or add in some, fluency work that we used to in the past. So we're really trying to collect that data to see what that need is. Mm-hmm. I will say that and I won't say this is widespread, but have been a few individual conversations that have happened at the elementary level where we've noticed some significant need for, student need, or high achiever need, and those have been handled on an individual basis at the building level, and I've been involved in those conversations. Again, not widespread, but really trying to kind of hone in on that equity piece and mm-hmm. having a high-quality Tier 1 equitable access for all students, because that's what the research is telling us, right? And to kind of close those achievement gaps and kind of move things forward, everyone needs that access. So that's kind of where the focus is, but movement and an eye towards how can we support, layering in different resources and such to meet the different needs.
Thank you both very much. That was really helpful. Thank you.
If I can just add one thing, because I think the question was sort of geared towards elementary, and I think it's something that that may not get talked about enough in Franklin, and you may not have kind of a context compared to other districts, but I think that the work in math at our middle schools in terms of differentiating and providing opportunities for students to attend to math as they're able, it is really remarkable. And so we have students who are in our 8th grade, for example, who are taking Algebra 1. They could be taking 8th grade math, Algebra 1, geometry, and we've even had Algebra 2 students in 8th grade. And that's kind of unheard of. That doesn't happen in a lot of places. And so in terms of meeting the needs of students, I think we're doing a great job with that example.
Thank you. I didn't mean to skip over thanking Ms. Morano, so thank you, Paula, too. No, I thanked Tina and Linda. I forgot to thank you, so thank you.
I'm sorry.
All right, I'll just go down again really quick, see if anybody has any additional questions, comments. Camille?
This is more for the audience. First, I want to thank you for preparing the budget book. Having looked at other towns' budget books, I'm really impressed with the humanity of it, that it's not just a bunch of dry numbers, that there are summaries that help you understand the context in each school and each location and the goals and the achievements and the mottos. And I think that helps people who are willing to look at the budget book, that it helps them not feel like, I can't look at all these lines and I don't understand anything. So it really helped me too. Including on page 122, I hadn't seen this in any budget book, frequently asked questions. And I would really suggest that citizens go read the frequently asked questions, because sometimes when you hear something in a presentation, you don't quite remember, or it doesn't make a lot of sense. But these questions are wonderfully posed and wonderfully answered, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Dave Callahan? Al?
No further questions.
Dave?
Just I'd like to say in regards to the materials that we touched on before, thank you for that explanation again. I think that was a good example, particularly with the Chromebooks, of how spending a little money can save money when it comes to the insurance. And also, as you mentioned, how the principals have discretionary accounts where they actually reduced spending in this coming year. I think it's also worthy to point out that we have our administration principal teams are also working to be good stewards of the town finances, so thank you.
Elise? No? Megan?
Thank you for the presentation, everybody.
All right, so if there's nothing more from the committee, as this is a public hearing, we want to ensure the public has a chance to ask questions. So just in the interest of time, if your question has already been addressed, please don't ask it again. And if you could please limit your time to 3 minutes. So at this point, if there's anyone, I'll check the audience here first. If there's anyone who'd like to make a question, comment? All right, so now we'll go to Zoom if anyone has their, okay. Selena Cousin.
Mute. Okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. I was like, how do I do this? Quick question. At the high school, I think it was 2 years ago, we removed the deputy principal position when Paul Perry left and when we hired Josh Hanna. Are we finding now, a year plus later, that that position is indeed not needed at the high school? Or is it an administrative position that would be helpful in overseeing some of the issues that are coming up at the high school lately?
Thanks for the question, Selena. I think that an additional administrator at the high school would be helpful. I'm not sure that I would propose to have the same structure that was in place before, and there's different administrative models. But I do feel that an additional administrator would be helpful at the high school. We did not put it forward in the budget. Just again, in terms of recognizing that the pot is only so big, and certainly it would be helpful, but I'm not sure I would structure it the same way.
Are you all set, Selena?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I
And
think it's partially offset by the team chair addition. The halftime team chair should help alleviate a little bit of the burden, but not entirely.
okay. Is there anyone else in Zoom land who would like to? I'll give it a second, just in case people are trying to figure out. Okay, all right. So,
Now
at
take-
this time,
Yep.
we require a motion to close the public hearing. So do I have a motion to close our FY23 public budget hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, the vote will come on the motion, and we'll do a roll call vote as Elise is remote. So Camille?
Yes.
Dave Callahan?
Yes.
Al Charles?
Yes.
Dave McNeil?
Yes.
Elise Stokes?
Yes.
Megan Whitmore?
Yes.
And I, yes, all right. Phew, all right, on to our normal agenda. You find it, all of this budget stuff. We'll give you guys a sec.
Just getting situated.
Yeah, no, everybody get ready. Set it up. All right, so let's see. All right, so we will move on to citizens' comments. This is different. All right, citizens' comments. Are there any citizens in the audience, in person or online, who would like to make a comment? We'll check the audience first. All right. Is there anyone on Zoom land? If you wanted to raise your hand. We'll give it a second. All right. Moving right along. Superintendents Report, Dr. Ahern.
Great, thank you. I have a few things to share with you this evening. I want to add on to the list of accomplishments that we've been seeing from Franklin High School And I know that I'm not going to be all encompassing, so if I leave anybody out, we'll catch you at the next superintendent's report. But I wanted to note a couple of things in addition to DECA and the FHS Theater Company. We had a second place showing by our academic decathlon team in the large school league, and 3 seniors won medals, so congratulations to them. We had several students receive some accolades from the Massachusetts Science and Engineering Fair. We had a student win second place for her project Encryption Decoded, the Effects of Cipher Choice on Entropy. She was also awarded the Optical Society Award and the BCC Region 3 Science Fair Committee Award. We had 2 students win a grand prize for their wheelchair project. They were also awarded the Tom Cahill Award, the Santa Fe, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Specialty Care Grand Prize, and the BCC Region 3 Science Fair Committee Award for Outstanding Team Project. All 3 students will advance to the state competition for the Massachusetts Science and Engineering Fair. And in sports news, I think the students in their reports talked about how the high school gymnastics team won the New England Championship. And I wanted to elaborate a little bit on the cheerleading team, who you may recall approached the school committee a few meetings ago for approval to attend the national competition after having won states here in Massachusetts. So that national title that they won in their division was when they were in Florida, thanks to your approval. And so congratulations to the high school cheerleaders.
It was us.
So great things at Franklin High School happening. I will include in the superintendent's report that gets printed all sorts of information related to the Substance Abuse Task Force event Critical Conversations. I'm sure that will come up later in the evening, but links and such will be in the report. Also, recently, the Best Buddies Prom was held last weekend. We certainly missed having it during COVID. It was one of those events that had to get deferred, so we haven't had it in a couple of years. But 60 students attended the Best Buddies Prom. These are students with disabilities attending with their peers. There was good food and dancing. They held it at the Elks Lodge, and if you missed it, there was a lovely story in the Milford Daily News earlier this week. The Franklin High School, again, as we sort of think about some positive things this spring, as we return a little bit more normal from COVID, we do have a group organizing an all-night party for our graduates. We haven't had that in a couple of years. So Friday, June 3rd is our graduation, and through the incredible volunteerism and support of families across the Franklin community, they're going to be hosting the all-night party, which is a tradition that started in 1990 and provides our graduate seniors with a safe and fun way to celebrate their high school graduation and high school experience. It's hosted at the Horace Mann Middle School with fun, including games, prizes, food, a DJ, and a hypnotist show. They are seeking volunteers. This can only happen through the efforts of volunteer parents and guardians who are willing to participate. And it really does take folks that are not necessarily parents of seniors, and perhaps especially parents who are not parents of seniors might want to host and volunteer for the all-night party, maybe with a recognition that, karma being what it is, some loving parent will also step forward when your child is a senior. So we have some information on how to get engaged with the all-night party group. They are hosting an informational meeting coming up at the end of the month. So we've been sending that out, and I'll put it in the superintendent's report. One thing that I wanted to bring up tonight, we did not end up surveying families around childhood vaccines. I did have a conversation with Kathy Liberty about the vaccine clinic that they hosted February vacation. And in my conversation with her, we were talking about ways, because signups have just been really low. And so having a school-specific vaccine clinic just seemed to me like we would have a hard time getting enough participation with her having a difficult time getting people to sign up for the town-sponsored ones. But knowing that there is a concern related to vaccine accessibility and families that may not have the ability, perhaps with transportation, she shared a state program with me for in-home vaccinations, and so I'll post that link as well and get that message out to PCCs and get that message out to principals and the health offices too, to continue to encourage vaccination. And lastly, Friday, March 25th, is a professional development half-day across the district for all of our schools. So students will have a half-day in the morning, and teachers will be in building-based professional development led by principals later that day. We have a number of things happening, but it is based on kind of principals working with their faculty and staff on local needs within their building. ECDC is focusing on social emotional learning resources and special education assessments. A number of elementary schools are looking at MTSS and tiered practices, particularly as it relates to academics. And or literacy instruction. The middle schools are focusing a lot on school culture. At Annie Sullivan, it has been some time since they thought about a school vision and mission, and so Lizzie Morrison is leading that, and Horace Mann and Remington are talking about community culture building and behavioral supports. At the high school, they continue course partner curriculum work, keys to literacy, and the social studies department is continuing to engage in a textbook evaluation. So again, the capital plan was approved recently by Town Council, which included funds to support a new social studies textbook adoption. I think our texts at the high school were published in 2012. So they're about 10 years old and need an update. So that is my update for the school committee this evening. Happy to take any questions. Okay. Camille?
No.
Dave?
No questions. I just want to echo the congratulations for all of our students. It's not even every other week, but almost every day that we're hearing some new amazing accomplishments that they're doing. So congratulations to all the students and to the family that continually support them and in drafting the practices, and the teachers and coaches that are kind of doing everything in their power as well to elevate the students to the best of their abilities. But just go Panthers.
Panthers. Yeah.
No questions, thank you.
Dave?
Okay.
I am. Sorry.
Thank you very much. No, it's very exciting to hear that the all-night party is coming back. When I was a senior at Frankenheim graduate, that was a lot of fun. So I still remember the Hypnotist show. Great time with the senior class. The Best Buddies Prom, it's just heartwarming to hear that goes on. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. And just one question: you mentioned that there was a grand prize for a wheelchair project. Do you happen to know what that was?
I can get more information. This was part of the science fair project, and
Yeah.
I just saw a little, I get the little sound bites on Twitter and
Sure.
through
That
newsletters,
just
but I can
sounded
find
very
out more
interesting.
information.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, like what was it?
Yeah, exactly.
Elise? Nope. Megan?
Thank you and congratulations.
Dr. Hearn, I don't even remember when it was because all the past 3 years melt together. I remember DECA had come in and gave a mask presentation. Like they had gone over their mask thing before COVID even started, so it had to be, 2019?
It would have been 2019.
Yeah. Could we get them to come in to share their project that they won the grand prize for the wheelchair?
I can ask, sure.
I just feel like that's something, those kids, they're so smart. All right, I need a second. The Go Panthers thing, for some reason, I found very funny. I
Good
lost
job, Dave.
it.
You broke
Yep.
Denise.
You broke me. All right, guest presentations, we have none. So we move on to discussion action items. Dr. Hearn.
So in your packet for action this evening are second readings and adoptions of 4 policies. I recommend adoption of the following policies as discussed. BEDB, Order of Business, BEDH, Public Participation at School Committee Meetings, EBCFA, Face Coverings, and JICFB, Bullying.
is there a motion to adopt policies BEDB, BEDH, EBCFA, and JICFB as detailed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion, questions?
No.
Camille? Dave? Al?
No, thank you.
Dave McNeil?
None, thank you.
Elise? Okay. Megan?
No.
I guess I just had one, like a procedural question. Is there a reason this didn't go back to policy before it came back to us for a second reading? I couldn't remember what the procedure.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, if somebody on the committee wanted policy to review it or had a substantive change or a piece of input, I think we would have held it
back.
off of this agenda, and or Lucas or I would have talked with Dave about either calling a meeting or holding this off of the agenda and putting it on the next policy meeting, which is in early April. So because I don't think anybody had reached out to policy, that didn't happen. So if you're okay moving forward with it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I should have asked you. Dave, did you want to add anything? Sorry. I should have asked you, I'm sorry.
Answered perfectly, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So seeing none, the vote will come on the motion. We'll do a roll call vote. Camille?
Yes.
Dave Callahan?
Yes.
Al Charles?
Yes.
Dave McNeil?
Yes.
Elise Stokes?
Yes.
Megan Whitmore?
Yes.
Denise Spencer, yes. All right, motion carries. Moving right along, new business, Dr. Hurd.
New business, at your next meeting, you can, I'm hoping, anticipate a budget vote to adopt a budget for the school committee. There is a budget subcommittee between now and then. I'm hoping to bring back a school calendar for your review, and there may be policy coming from the policy subcommittee.
And the school calendar, that's with the professional days? Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, you already approved sort of the skeleton of
Yeah.
the holiday periods and the breaks, but these would have the PD days, yep.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, information matters. All right, I have a specific list. I'm going to be reading them in. All right, so superintendent evaluation, Elise, nothing, correct? All right.
No, we have something.
Oh, we do, okay.
We do. Surprise. So we're gonna have, we talked about a while ago, but we've had other things on our plate, but having a workshop to provide an overview for the new school committee members. So it's likely gonna be at 6 p.m. on one of the nights that we have a school committee meeting, hopefully in April, and I'll let you know the date when it's confirmed.
Thank you. Budget, Dave McNeil.
Yes, thank you. The Budget Subcommittee met last Tuesday, March 15th, to discuss the next steps of the budget writing process. We also reviewed the budget flyer that the administration staff put together and went over some questions regarding line items. In addition to that, members participated in this year's inaugural meeting of the Joint Budget Subcommittee on Thursday, March 10th, where we discussed the town's fiscal outlook for FY23 and beyond. The next meeting of the Budget Subcommittee will be next Tuesday, March 29th at 5 p.m.
Did you mean this amazing budget flyer?
That very
You mean
same.
that beautiful one? Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, policy, Dave Callahan.
So we have our next meeting on April 6th, and at which point I would imagine for the next full school committee, we'll probably have a few items to be brought up for first reading.
Okay. Joint PCC, wasn't sure if.
Yep,
Okay.
I can give the update.
All right.
So we met actually yesterday. So we talked through the Teacher Appreciation Week that's happening the first week of May. So they're actually covering principals, School Nurse Day, and also School Lunch Hero Day. So it should be interesting. We also talked through the Day of Giving for the Franklin Education Foundation, which is happening on May 4th. This is also their 25th anniversary, so definitely a big, huge milestone to accomplish. So looking to see what's going to happen on that date. And then the schools are doing their normal fundraising activities, photo sessions, bag bingo, poetry in motion, excuse me, food drives, things of that nature. So definitely keeping busy. Our next meeting is on April 12th at 4 p.m.
April 12th, all right, thank you. School Wellness Advisory Council, Elise?
We haven't had a SWAC meeting since my last report, but our next meeting will be Tuesday, April 5th.
Okay. And then don't mute yourself. CPAC?
CPAC. So the CPAC had a meeting last week, and there was a presentation about the tiered focus monitoring process, and the families in attendance asked great questions. The CPAC has been growing. They have about 60 new members over the last 2 weeks, and their social media presence is also growing. They share lots of helpful information for families, so go check it out on Facebook at Franklin CPAC and on their website at franklincpac.org.
Thank you, Elise. All right, community relations. We met earlier this evening to discuss our upcoming legislative forum, which is scheduled for Thursday, April 14th at 6:30 p.m. So this is an opportunity for our state reps to come answer questions surrounding education and discuss matters happening at the state level. We had our first community chat this past Saturday. Our next one is scheduled for June 4th. Be on the lookout for more information soon. Substance Abuse Task Force. Lucas, you're chomping at the bit. I can tell.
Thank you.
You had it ready?
Ready to go.
If you wanted to talk about this Thursdays.
Sure. So Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m., the Substance Abuse Task Force will be hosting a critical conversation as part of our series on social media and the impact of social media. We're really excited. If, Dave, you could zoom in on this. We have an esteemed journalist, Georgia Wells from the Wall Street Journal, joining us. She'll be zooming in because she lives in California. And we have an in-person visit from Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito to talk about the initiatives around social media at the state level. In addition to that, we have a host of local panelists that Mrs. Morano will help get some really good information out of them and facilitate that segment. And then we'll have an audience Q&A. And most importantly, when we do these things, we really want to focus on the now what. So we've learned all this, we've talked about it, what types of strategies can people walk away with? So we'll have a physical printout, handout for folks, but also some resources that they can reference after it. So that's how we plan to structure the evening. We're really excited about it. We hope that folks can either tune in or attend. It'll be at the Franklin High School auditorium from 6 to 8 p.m.
And Lucas, I did
Thank
see
you.
a few questions around Facebook. Are students encouraged to attend?
Students can attend. They're welcome to attend, absolutely. And also Mrs. Morano.
Yes, thank you. I was chomping at the bit for that one. All right, so we hope you all received a link to the documentary which hopefully was sent through, I know was sent through Regroup.
Yep.
So we have 3,000 licenses for every that every family can watch. So in the comfort of your own home, it went out on Sunday night, and we have the access to it until next Sunday evening as well. And it's awesome. It is unbelievable. I suggest you watch it with your family and your children, and have a discussion after, maybe over some pizza and some cupcakes and ice cream, and just talk about social media. And we want to really message that social media isn't bad. There's some good parts of social media too, and really it's talking about controlling, and putting in. Well, we'll talk more about resources on Thursday night. But I do encourage you to watch the documentary.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And can I just do a plug, sorry, for the Safe Coalition who funded that screening. So we want to thank our partners, the Safe Coalition, for that.
Yes. All right, and then, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, we met in person on March 16th. It was amazing to see everyone, not just over Zoom. It was great. We had breakout groups. So I'm part of the community relations group. So we kind of we sat with all the other groups, kind of eavesdropped, seeing how the other groups are doing, what they're planning. Lily Rivera, our marketing specialist, she had a nice video going. She was asking people questions, so we'll be pulling together some stuff to release to the community soon. And our next meeting is April 16th. All right, Dr. Ahern, consent agenda.
Denise?
Oh.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Sorry. Space needs and facilities. Okay.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Al, I'm so sorry.
It's
Okay, yes. All right, space needs facilities assessment. Al, go ahead.
So just want to let folks know that we are kicking off our Space Needs and Facilities Assessment Subcommittee starting on the 29th at 6:30 p.m. It is virtual only for this first meeting. Hope folks can just join us and participate and just get a sense of what we're looking to do and what our ultimate goal is going to be. So, thank you.
So Monday, March 29th, 6:30 p.m., Zoom only?
Yep. That is correct.
Okay. Just wanted to give it extra plug because I forgot. I'm sorry.
It's all right, all forgiven.
Okay. Dr. Ahern, consent agenda.
Sure. I recommend approval of the minutes of your March 1st, 2022 special meeting and the March 8th, 2022 regular school committee meeting as detailed. I recommend approval of the request of Beth Jensen and Jennifer Martinelli to take Keller 5th graders to the Roger Williams Zoo in Providence, Rhode Island on May 27th, 2022 as detailed. I recommend approval of the budget transfers as detailed. I recommend acceptance of a check for $1,240.80 from the JFK PCC for supplemental supplies as detailed. I recommend acceptance of a check for $5,000 from Takashi and Keiko Kitanasono for a FHS scholarship as detailed. I recommend acceptance of a check for $1,299.94 from Life Touch Shutterfly LLC for in-house enrichment at Remington Middle School as detailed. I recommend acceptance of a check for $230 from the Franklin Music Parents for in-house enrichment for the music department as detailed. And I recommend acceptance of 2 checks totaling $5,101.64 for Jefferson Elementary School as follows. Donors choose $101.64 supplemental supplies, and Jefferson PCC $5,000 field trips.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as detailed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, questions?
No.
Nope. Elise, you all set? Okay. Megan?
All set.
All right. All right, vote will come on the motion. Roll call vote. Camille?
Yes.
Dave Callahan?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Dave McNeil?
Yes.
Elise?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Denise, yes. All right. All right, payment of bills. I've reviewed, they are in order. Elise Stokes, payroll.
Payroll's in order.
Okay, so finally, we will be adjourning to executive session, and we will not be returning to open meeting. So at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session as discussed. So we've got pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the FEARN unit, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the school committee, and the chair so declares. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with non-union personnel. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, vote, roll call vote. Camille?
Yes.
Dave Callahan?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Dave McNeil?
Yes.
Elise?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Denise? Yes? All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on April 12th.